Do you want to live not just longer, but better? If you're over 65, it's not just about adding time to your life, but making that time count. Whether it's traveling, hiking, golfing, playing pickleball, lifting your grandchildren, or simply taking care of your own home and yard, all of those things require strength. In this video, I'll share the 5 essential exercises for seniors to improve their quality of life. And I'll teach you how to do them safely and correctly so you can get stronger without getting injured. The first and most important exercise is the squat. Squats are absolutely essential for seniors to be able to stand up from chairs, get off the toilet, or squat down to put things underneath the cabinet. Now, the safest and easiest way to learn to do a squat is standing in front of a chair. That way you have something to sit down on in case you lose your balance. It also gives you a natural stopping point to where you know you've sort of bottomed out a little bit. To do the squat, stand up and place your feet about hips width or slightly wider apart, and your feet will probably point straight ahead or maybe slightly out to the sides. Then turn your knees over top of your feet so it opens up your hips a little. This will allow you to drop your hips down a little bit easier. It's also important that you keep your spine in a neutral position, so you don't want to excessively arch. You also don't want to round out. So keep your spine neutral. Then you're going to sit back on your heels. If you put your weight forward on your toes like that, that uses your quadriceps a lot more, which is not a bad exercise, but it can compress your kneecaps. So it's usually much more comfortable on your knees if you sit back on your heels a little bit. Now notice that even though the spine's in a neutral position, it does require leaning forwards a little bit, because if you were to stay perfectly upright, you'd fall backwards, which is why you do it in front of a chair when you're first learning out. So start up like this, drive the knees backwards, and then come back up. Drive the knees out, hips backwards, come back up, and repeat for 10 to 15 repetitions. Now, by the time you're done with your set, you should be pretty tired to where it feels difficult or impossible to get up from the chair one more time. And once you're able to do 15 repetitions rather easily, it's time to add some weight. One of the safest and easiest ways to add weight to a squat is doing a goblet squat, where you hold one dumbbell out in front of you, cupping it like this with your hands. This helps to counterbalance your weight, so it keeps you from falling backwards. It also helps you to keep your trunk relatively more upright. Now, the technique is just like the regular squat. You put your hips back, sit back on your heels, and then drive up, going back and forth, and just go as deep as you can. You also want to keep your knees drived out to the side and then push back up, keeping hips, knees, and toes in alignment. If you don't feel confident with your balance, you can also do this in front of the chair like you did with the bodyweight squat. The next exercise is the deadlift. Deadlifts are important for being able to lift things up from the floor. If you pick up packages off your porch, or pick up a bag of dog food or fertilizer, then you do a version of a deadlift. And deadlifts are known for being bad for your back, but that's not true. However, if you do deadlifts incorrectly, they can hurt your back. So here's how to do a deadlift correctly in order to strengthen your back and your core. When you're doing a deadlift, you want to get close to the weight that you're lifting. If you lift from back here, that puts a lot of torque on your lower back and can set you up for injury, so make sure you're close to it. Next, you're going to hinge through the hips. So you're moving at the hip joints, keeping the spine in a relatively neutral position. You don't want it excessively arched. You also don't want it excessively rounded. Push the hips back like that. Reach down and grab the dumbbells with your hands. Your hands are just going to act like hooks. It's going to be your glutes and hamstrings primarily that are lifting the weight. Now, you are going to keep your abdominals tense in here to support your spine, but it's going to be primarily the glutes and hamstrings that are leading the movement. So push your weight back on your heels, then drive the heels down through the floor. It is okay to allow your knees to bend slightly. You don't want your knees completely straight like that. You also don't want to be in a position like a squat. So allow a gentle knee bend, drive through the heels, and then drive the hips underneath of you. Push the hips back, lower the weight down, drive through the heels, pushing the hips underneath of you, go back down, drive through the heels, and back down. And that's how you do a deadlift. Now the next exercise is also to help with lifting things up from the floor, and that's called a bent over row. To do that, you'll start in the same position as a deadlift. You'll lift the weight up and then come down to about knee level here. Now you're going to squeeze your shoulder blades back together and lead the movement by pulling your elbows backwards. So squeeze the shoulder blades, pull the elbows back. Think more about the shoulder blade and elbow movement than lifting the weights. You also don't want to pull the elbow way back behind your spine. So just coming to about body level and then back down, back and forth like this. Make sure to squeeze the shoulder blades at the top of the movement. Again, it's more for your upper back than it is for your arms. You also strengthen your biceps and forearms when you do this exercise. Now the next exercise is for overhead lifting. This may be something as simple as lifting dishes into the cabinet. It may be lifting your grandchildren. It may be lifting a suitcase into an overhead bin. And to practice overhead lifting, we're going to do a shoulder press or overhead press. To do this, you'll use a pair of dumbbells, and likely a pair of dumbbells that's a little bit lighter than the ones that you used for a previous exercise. You want to keep your shoulders externally rotated. That means the weights are either directly above or slightly behind your elbows. One of the most common mistakes that I see with shoulder presses is that people push the weights out in front of them, but that puts a lot more stress on your shoulders. It also puts your shoulders into an internally rotated position, which can pinch your rotator cuff tendons. So it's important to maintain the external rotation in your shoulders when doing a shoulder press. Now, when you're doing a shoulder press, you also want to lead with your elbows. Don't think so much about lifting the weights. Think about pushing your elbows up towards the ceiling, and your forearms and the weights will just follow. So push up towards the ceiling like that. Drive your elbows up, and the forearms and weights just follow. From a back view, you also want to make sure that your shoulder blades are moving out to the sides and upwards as you're pressing up. So go up and back down, up and back down, up and back down. And then you want to repeat that for 10 to 15 repetitions or until you get tired. And at the end of the set, you should feel like your shoulders and arms are wobbling just a little bit, and that way you'll know you've worked your muscles to exhaustion. Now, if you've noticed so far, all of the exercises that we've done have been symmetrical, meaning you're doing the same things with the left and the right side of your body. But you also need to work on side-to-side balance. This helps with fall prevention, as well as if you're getting up and down from the floor. And that exercise is the lunge. To do that, one leg is going to be forwards, one leg is going to be backwards, and technically, this version of the lunge is called the split squat. But this is essentially the movement that you'd use to get up and down from the floor. Now, if you can't get all the way down, just go down as deep as you can comfortably and then come back up. You want to put most of your weight through this front leg. The back leg is just touching down for balance. And you want to keep your toes on the floor, your heel up in the air. If you keep your heel down like this, you kind of get stuck by your ankle mobility. So make sure you take a wide enough stagger, drop your hips down, thinking about keeping your shin relatively vertical, drop your bottom down towards the floor as deep as you can go, and then drive back up through the heel of this front leg. If you're looking from the front, you also want to keep a proper hip, knee, toe alignment. So you don't want your knee to come in this way. You want to make sure that you keep everything lined up, or even think about turning your knee out just slightly. And then you go up and down like that. Again, hip, knee, toe alignment, going up and down until your legs get tired. Now, that's just one variation of the lunge, and there are many other ones which you can learn about in this video over here. But before you go, if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.